is just a quick slide cast to help you with your interviewing skills. Interviewing is a really important part of the job search process, so hopefully these tips will help you with your next interview. The main purpose of an interview, of course, is to ultimately get a job offer. However, a few other purposes for an interview would be to find out if you're a good fit for the company and to find out if the company is a good fit for you. Also, this is your opportunity to really market yourself and to express to the employer how you can benefit his or her company. Let the person know your skills and your qualifications and experiences that really make you the best candidate for the position. Overall, you just want to make a lasting positive impression so they'll remember you and want to hire you for the job in which you're applying. Throughout the day, you really want to make a strong, good first impression. So anytime you meet anybody throughout the day, it's a good idea to offer a nice, firm handshake. Obviously, you don't want it to be too strong or too weak, but just a nice, firm handshake. 2 to 3 pumps is good. Offer strong eye contact and a smile. So just remember those tips when you meet people throughout the interview day. It's always a good idea to be really polite and courteous to everyone that you meet. So from the second you enter that parking lot, you want to be polite and courteous and smile at everyone, just to show that you're a personable, approachable person. It's a good idea to arrive early on the day of your interview. I recommend going about 5 to 10 minutes early, unless of course you are asked to come earlier to fill out paperwork or something like that. A good tip to consider is to actually go to the interview site a few days before or the day before, just so you know exactly where you're going, you know where to park, you know where to enter. That way you can feel more comfortable on the day of the actual interview. You also want to really prepare what you're going to wear for that day. And you really want to dress in true business attire. And true business attire for men and women is a full professional suit. That's generally going to be in a dark color like black, gray, navy, or brown. Girls, you can wear a skirt suit or a pantsuit. Either is perfectly fine. If you do wear a skirt, though, you want to make sure that your skirt is about 2 inches above the knee, not any shorter or any longer. And appropriate business attire suggests that you do wear hose as well if you're wearing a skirt suit. As far as undershirts to go under your jacket, you want to be really conservative with that as well for both men and women. Colors such as ivory, white, light yellow, light blue, and lavender seem to work pretty well. You don't want anything really loud or with a really loud pattern. Same thing goes for ties for men. You want to keep your tie simple. You want your tie to match your shirt and your suit, and just keep with a simple pattern such as a stripe or something like that. That's not going to be too distracting. As far as jewelry goes, for women, you can wear just one set of small stud earrings. A watch is perfectly fine, a small pendant necklace, and one ring, but I wouldn't suggest anything else. And for men, if you would like, you can wear one ring and a watch, but I wouldn't wear anything else. Ladies, if your hair is longer than shoulder length, it's a good idea to go ahead and pull it back at least halfway, so that way it's not going to fall on your face and be really distracting. And men, just make sure that you're clean cut overall with your hair and facial hair. As far as shoes go, you want your shoes to match your suit. So if you're wearing a black suit, you want to have black shoes, as well as socks. If you're wearing a brown suit, you want to have brown shoes. So just make sure that you're consistent and that your shoes are comfortable. Ladies, you want to stay away from slingbacks, peep toes, sandals, anything like that, and just go with a solid, comfortable pump that's not any more than 2 inches high. Another thing that can really affect the way that you're viewed during an interview is your body language. You really just want to exude confidence throughout the day and make sure that doesn't transition into arrogance, but confidence is really important. So again, you want to offer a smile, you want to have that strong eye contact, and you really want to be energetic and enthusiastic about the position in which you're applying. You want to make sure to have good posture both when you're standing and sitting. When you're sitting, make sure that you're comfortable, but that you're not too relaxed or too stiff. Just be comfortable so you can use hand gestures naturally. You're not going to be tempted to fidget with your hair or your clothing or your portfolio or your resume or anything that might be close to you. So overall, just try to relax and be yourself. They're really trying to get to know you, and the only way that they can do that is if you really are yourself. Throughout the day, you're likely to get a lot of questions. These are a few examples of common interview questions that you might encounter, no matter what field you're interested in going into. These questions deal a lot with your strengths and your weaknesses. You want to know why you're interested in the position and why you are a qualified candidate for the position. It's also a good idea to be aware of your short-term and long-term goals and to have a good reason why they should hire you. In addition, you always want to ask them questions, and we'll talk about that more here in just a minute. There are a few basic tips for answering interview questions. Of course, you always want to be honest. You want to be detailed and specific, so don't leave them hanging and wanting more. So definitely be specific. Give specific examples and tell specific stories whenever possible to support all of your answers and to prove everything that you say. Employers really appreciate those stories because they can see how your past experiences are going to predict your future results. And that really is the entire purpose of behavioral interviewing, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. You do want to be concise with your answers, so make sure not to ramble and say the same thing over and over again. As I mentioned earlier, show your enthusiasm for the position through your answers, through your eye contact, through your gestures overall. And really, you want to try to highlight your strengths throughout your answers and really try to minimize your weaknesses as much as possible. You definitely want to show your personality a bit and stay positive. Don't bring up anything negative, unless, of course, you're asked the weakness question, and then you really want to talk about how you're working on overcoming that weakness. So focus on your skills, your strengths, and your experiences that are really relevant to the job description that prove you can do the job and that you are the best candidate. A couple of good tips to remember are to use the A+1 method and the STAR method. A+1 stands for answer plus one example. So anytime you're answering a question, whether you're asked for an example or not, it's a good idea to state the answer and then prove it with a story. You can prove that with a story by using the STAR method, which stands for situation, task, action, and results. So you want to state the situation that you were in, the task that you were assigned, the actions you took to achieve that task, and then of course you want to mention the results. So what was the outcome? And hopefully that outcome was positive, and if not, state what you learned from that situation. So here's an example of a behavioral interview answer for the question, tell me about a time when you had to work as a member of a team.
One particular time when I worked with a group of people was when I was president of my fraternity. We were in charge of setting up a philanthropy event that we do every single year. We didn't donate money to the Jimmy B Foundation. Well, what our event is every year is a Powerpuff tournament that we do for just 40 girls on campus, as well as any other women that would like to join and set up a team. That was kind of what we're in charge of. Now, what we decided to do is set up a committee where the committee is in charge of coming up with the ideas, the t-shirt ideas, coming up with the packets, and everything that's involved in that. So some of the tasks that you're involved in are fundraising and going to the sorority houses and their meetings and trying to get interest. You also want to get interest on campus. And then also more of the aspects of setting up the actual event, such as who's going to be there, who are the referees, who's going to be in charge of concessions. So there's a lot of involvement and planning going on. Some of the actions that I decided to take within the group was I was in charge of setting up the meetings for the sorority houses, as well as setting up the logistics of the actual day of the event, since it's just a one-day event. So what I did for the story house is contacted all the story presidents the time I could come meet. We made sure that we looked presentable, we were dressed up, we made sure we really got across the point of this is for the Jimmy B Foundation for Cancer Research. As far as more of the planning for the actual day of the event, some of the things that I did included getting people to volunteer to be referees, getting people to volunteer to coach teams, as each team had their own coach, as well as setting up the time structure so people weren't there for more than 4 or 5 hours at a time. I wanted to make sure people got breaks. So what are some of the actions that I took within this group of people? And the results was it ended up being a really great day. We raised over $1,200 for the Jimmy D Foundation. Great event. All the women they decided we got really good feedback that it was a good time, and we plan on improving this for next year.
So that's just an example of an answer to a behavioral interview question. Next, here are some tips for answering specific interview questions. These are 3 common questions that are often asked during interviews. First, the original question that you'll probably always be asked is, tell me about yourself. So a few tips for answering this question include giving a brief summary of your college background and involvement. So tell them your major, tell them where you attended school, and then also let them know if you were involved in any student organizations or any volunteer work and things like that. Next, you want to segue into relevant work history and experience. So talk to them about those positions that you held briefly that helped you develop skills that would transfer into the position in which you're applying. It's also a good idea to mention that your interest in the position and also the relevant skills that you have that make you a quality candidate. Next, you'll probably be asked, what is your greatest strength in some way or another? So my suggestion for this question is to state your strength and then prove it. And you want to prove it by using that A+1 method as well as the STAR method. So tell a story to prove that strength in which you accomplish something using that strength. And make sure to tell them the situation, the task, the action, and the result. You'll also probably be asked something such as, what is your biggest weakness? And of course you want to answer that with something that's not too terrible, that's going to make them want to send you out the door. But it's a good idea to be honest. None of us are perfect. Be honest, and it's great if you can tell a story in which you encountered that weakness and you were either able to overcome it or you learn something from that situation, and also make sure to talk to them about what you're doing to work on that weakness so it's not going to interfere in this future job. We already talked a little bit about behavioral interviewing, and a behavioral interview style is one in which they basically force you to tell those stories that I've been encouraging you to tell throughout the slide cast. So these are some examples of behavioral interview questions. Tell me about a time when things were not going as planned. How did you handle it and what did you learn? Give me an example of a time when you had to persuade an individual or group to use your idea. So these are questions that really want you to tell them a very specific story. So use that STAR method, and it's a good idea to actually think of some stories ahead of time that you could use that you want to relay to them in an interview setting. So even though you don't know the questions that will be asked to you, you can still have some questions ready, fresh in your mind, so when you are asked challenging questions, you'll be ready to answer those with a strong story. You also always want to ask them questions. So the final question that you'll probably be asked is, what questions do you have for us? And it's a really good idea to always be prepared with a list of questions so they can see that you really took the time to think about questions that you would like to know to help you make a decision about this position. Like I said earlier, you want to make sure that this is the right choice for you and that this organization is a good fit for you. So I do suggest writing out some questions prior to your interview and taking those with you for the day of the interview. And here are some examples of some questions. How would you describe the work environment? What do you see as the biggest challenge in this position? What is the training procedure? So these are all questions that you would really need to ask a person and that you couldn't just find the answer to on the internet. So think about questions that you really want to know and that can really show your interest in the position. I would recommend having at least 5 to 10 questions prepared. Preparation overall is absolutely key to acing an interview. So you really want to know yourself, know what you're looking for, know what your skills are, know what you can bring to the table. But in addition, you also want to research the company and know about the organization, know the job description in which you're applying. And the more that you can talk with them about their company, the more impressed that they're going to be. So Google the organization, search their website, see if you can get a hold of their annual report, and just gather as much information as possible so you feel comfortable going into that interview to talk about their organization and how you would be a good fit in that organization. It's always a good idea also to practice interviewing, so conduct mock interviews or practice with your roommate or your parents just to get some practice in answering these questions and telling your stories. As I mentioned earlier, write down some stories ahead of time so you can brainstorm and have those stories fresh in your mind, and read through those stories the week before your interview, the hour before, half an hour before, so they'll be fresh in your mind and ready to go. Also, as I mentioned in the previous slide, you want to write down questions that you want to ask throughout the day. And of course, make sure that your outfit is ready. Make sure your suit is pressed, your collared shirt is pressed, that your shoes are comfortable, and that you're going to be able to look your very best. You also probably want to take a few things with you to your interview. I suggest taking multiple copies of your resume. Probably about 5 would be a good number, and it's a good idea to print those off on resume paper. And you can buy resume paper at Target or Walmart or Office Depot for about $7 for about 200 sheets. Also, it's a good idea to take copies of your references with you as well. Again, you can print those on resume paper. You might want to take a Kleenex or something like that just in case you have a runny nose or a coughing fit or something like that. I would take a pad of paper and a pen so that way you can jot down notes, you can jot down contact information if needed, and also take that list of questions that you've brainstormed prior to the interview. I also suggest taking the phone number of the company and the directions to the company just in case something happens. Maybe there's a wreck on the interstate or something like that that's keeping you from getting there on time. That way you can call and let them know the situation so they're not just going to think that you're running late. I would suggest carrying all of these items in a portfolio or a briefcase. A portfolio works really well because usually there are slots for your resume, there's slots for your pen and your paper, and you can also collect business cards throughout the day and keep those in your portfolio as well. You can get portfolios really at any office store or department store, and they'll cost anywhere from about $15 to $50. You can even buy them at the KU bookstore. So those are just a few tips to take with you as you get ready for future internship or job interviews. So that's all for this slidecast.